was screaming all night in the hotel when he was doing it to me. The silence in the hotel hallway was deceptive. Beneath the thin walls, the room shook with muffled gasps and trembling cries. The air was thick with heat, not just from the summer night pressing against the windows, but from the storm that raged between two bodies on a borrowed bed. The lights flickered as shadows moved with passion and pain, tangled in sheets that had witnessed more than love. It began with a soft knock and a whispered invitation, one that should have never been answered. But it was. The moment the door opened, temptation flooded in like wildfire. His eyes held something forbidden, dangerous, and undeniably seductive. She knew he wasn't hers to want, but the way he looked at her made denial impossible. Their lips collided with desperation, as if they'd been starving for this. Clothes disappeared in haste, kisses deepened with every step toward the bed, and hearts beat violently against chests that had once known only silence. The first touch was electric. His hands exploring places untouched for years, awakening her skin like it was being born again. But behind every moan, behind every gasp, there was guilt threading through the room like a razor-thin wire, tightening with every second. She wasn't supposed to feel this alive. She wasn't supposed to scream his name like that. Yet she did again and again, loud enough that the walls had to listen. The night grew darker, the sheets damp with sweat and secrets. His voice was deep, commanding, filthy, whispering words in her ear that made her legs weak and her soul shiver. He spoke like he owned her, touched her like she was made for him. Her back arched under his mouth, her nails clawing into his shoulders, drawing blood that smeared like war paint. It wasn't love. Not really. But it felt like salvation in disguise. Her heart ached in rhythm with the pleasure. Every kiss was laced with lies. Every thrust carried betrayal. And still, she let him in, physically and emotionally, until there was no part of her that wasn't his, at least for that one unforgettable night. By 3 a.m., her voice was nearly gone from screaming. Not from pain, but from the explosion of everything she'd held back for years. Regret, desire, anger, and the desperate longing to be wanted. She lay breathless beside him, her legs trembling, her mind spinning in circles. Then the silence returned. Not the silence of peace, but the kind that carries warning. He looked at her differently now. Not with hunger, but with a distant coldness, as if the heat had burned away all illusion. She reached out to touch him, but he turned away. Something shifted. Something cracked. And that's when she saw it. His phone lighting up. A message from someone he swore he'd broken away from. The screen glowed with a name she feared. And the words, "I miss you. Did you tell her yet?" Her heart sank. 1,000 knives buried themselves into her chest. Everything in her wanted to believe this night meant something more. But the truth stared her in the face, cruel and cold. He wasn't hers. He never was. And worse, she was just the other woman, trapped in a story where she didn't even have a name. The emotions swirled into chaos. Her eyes filled with tears, but not the kind that begged for sympathy. These were the tears of betrayal, the kind that tasted bitter and burned hot. She stood naked and trembling, her body marked with lust and lies. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the monster behind the man. The blood on her nails was no longer a trophy. It was evidence of a crime, one against her own heart. She dressed in silence, her fingers shaking, each movement haunted by memories already turning into ghosts. But just as she reached the door, his hand grabbed her wrist. Not gently, not lovingly. There was darkness in his grip. "You're not leaving," he growled. His voice suddenly stripped of all warmth. Panic surged through her, stronger than any orgasm or heartbeat. He wasn't done with her, not yet. What she thought was a night of passion became a cage, and she was trapped in it. She screamed again, but this time not for pleasure. This time, it was a scream that the walls would remember long after she was gone. The door slammed shut behind her as his grip yanked her back into the room. The air turned thick with fear, and the warmth that once wrapped them in pleasure curdled into something cruel and terrifying. He wasn't the man who kissed her with fire anymore. Now he looked like a stranger with hunger in his eyes, but not the kind that wanted her body. It was the hunger to control, to dominate, to break. Her wrist throbbed where his fingers dug deep, but she held her head high, unwilling to let him see her shatter, at least not yet. He threw her back onto the bed, not with passion but with force. She gasped, her body bouncing against the mattress as he loomed over her, eyes blazing with something twisted. "You think you can just leave?" he hissed, his breath hot and bitter. "After everything." The room shrank around her, the walls now witnesses to a nightmare disguised as romance. She tried to speak, but his hand was on her mouth before she could breathe a word. His other hand gripped her thigh, not in lust but power. The touch that once made her moan now made her skin crawl. And then he whispered in her ear, low and venomous, "You scream again, but this time no one's going to think it's for pleasure." Tears burned her eyes, not just from fear but from disbelief. How had she ended up here? Just hours ago, he was whispering sweet nothings and lighting fires inside her. Now he was darkness personified, dragging her deeper into hell. But she wasn't as broken as he thought. As he straddled her, forcing her back into the mattress, her hand reached for the lamp on the nightstand. In one swift motion, she swung it, the sound of glass shattering filling the air. He stumbled back, cursing, blood dripping from his forehead. She didn't wait, she ran. Barefoot and breathless, she raced down the hotel hallway, ignoring the pain in her feet and the bruises on her heart. Her mind was a tornado, chaotic and fast, but her instincts were clear: survive. She reached the elevator, frantically pressing the button. He was behind her, growling her name, promising things that sounded more like threats than pleas. Just as he lunged forward, the elevator dinged, and she dove inside, slamming the close button with everything she had. His fist hit the door as it shut. His voice cut off in a scream of rage. The descent felt eternal. Her chest heaved, her body shaking. Blood smeared down her arm, not all of it his. She felt raw, violated not just physically but emotionally. Every kiss, every moan, every whispered promise now felt like a lie wrapped in silk. She stumbled into the lobby, ignoring the curious stares. Her dress was torn, her lips swollen, her eyes wild. The receptionist opened her mouth to ask something, but one look silenced her. She ran out into the night, into the rain, where her sobs could finally escape her throat. Days passed, maybe weeks. She couldn't tell anymore. She hid herself in silence, drowning in memories that haunted her like ghosts. The taste of him still lingered on her tongue. The bruises faded, but the betrayal remained etched into her bones. She learned that he had gone back to the woman who sent the message. They posted pictures, laughing, hugging, pretending like their love was untouched by sin. Her stomach turned at the sight. But she didn't speak. She didn't warn the other woman. 'Cause she had a plan. She started recording everything. Voice notes, memories, receipts, screenshots, everything he said, everything he did. The hotel security footage was easy to request, especially with the scratches on her wrist as evidence. She didn't go to the police. Not yet. Because she didn't want justice. She wanted impact. She wanted every lie he ever told to unravel in front of him. And one night she got her chance. They were attending a high-profile charity event, one she knew he couldn't resist flaunting. She dressed in crimson, fitted, elegant, powerful, the color of danger, the color of war. When she entered the ballroom, heads turned, not just because of her beauty, but because of the fire in her eyes. He saw her across the room, choking on his drink. His new partner clutched his arm, confused. She approached slowly, like a storm gathering strength. And then, without hesitation, she pulled out her phone, connected it to the speaker system, and pressed play. Moans filled the room. His voice. Her voice. Dirty words. Sexy whispers. Screams, some of passion, some of pain. The room fell silent except for the sound of their betrayal echoing off chandeliers and champagne glasses. His face turned white. His partner dropped her glass, the shatter echoing just like that night in the hotel. People gasped. Some turned away. Others recorded. And then she spoke into the mic, calm, cold, commanding. She told them everything. How he lured her. How he touched her. How he held her down. How he left her bleeding and broken. Every word landed like a slap. Every detail painted him darker. And when she was done, she dropped the mic, literally, and walked out, heels clicking against marble like a drum roll of vengeance. He tried to follow, but security held him back. His world collapsed in real time. Relationships, endorsements, deals, respect. Gone in seconds. And she didn't look back. Not once. That night she didn't sleep. Not because of trauma, but because of release. Her scream that night in the hotel had echoed from a place deeper than flesh. It was the scream of a woman who had died and been reborn in a single moment. And now she lived again, stronger, louder, unashamed. But the story didn't end there. Weeks later, she received a message from a number she didn't recognize. Just a single sentence. "You thought it was over." Her blood ran cold. She knew who it was. He hadn't learned. He hadn't let go. Fear crept back into her bones like a long-lost predator. But this time she didn't run. She traced the number. She followed the trail. And what she found shocked her to her core. He wasn't just toxic. He was dangerous. Dozens of women. Similar stories. Bruises. Screams. Silence. He was a pattern. A predator hiding behind seduction. She gathered them. One by one. Survivors. Warriors. Women with voices buried under shame. Together they formed something powerful. They filed reports. Shared recordings. Launched an investigation that lit up headlines. He was arrested. Denied bail. His face splashed across every screen. No longer sexy, no longer charming, but monstrous. And as he sat behind bars, the world finally saw him for what he was. Not a lover. Not a man. But a nightmare disguised as desire. She stood in court not to cry, but to stare him in the eye. To tell him calmly that he did not break her. That her screams became stories. Her scars became shields. And her pain, power. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on all counts. As he was led away in cuffs, he looked at her one last time, silent, defeated. And she smiled. Later that night she stood in front of the mirror, alone but not lonely. She touched her own skin, not with shame but pride. She remembered the fire, passion, pain. But most of all, she remembered the strength that rose from it all. She had loved. She had kissed. She had screamed. She had bled. But she had survived. And survival, she realized, was the sexiest revenge of all. Then,